Good evening, everybody. It's October 12th, 2025, and this little mini art. This original art is by Diane in France, and it's called Dapper the Cat, and it's multi-dimensional. It's really cute. So, I wanted to have a cute little image for a not-so-cute topic that we're going to discuss, which is bridging the gap, gang stalking informants. So anyway, welcome back to my channel. Thank you all for subscribing and sharing some of these videos, sharing the information. And I am so glad to hear some of you saying that until you came to my channel, you thought this was only happening to you. Well, surprise, surprise, there are millions of us, not only around the country, but around the world. In every country, every city, and every state, and it's horrendous. And no, you're not crazy, you're not schizophrenic, you're not delusional, you're not paranoid. This really is happening, and I'm going to read, not all of it, it's 116 pages, and it is in PDF form. So if you're interested in having this document, I actually own the book. I have the book somewhere, but I also have the PDF, and it's a really good book. I'm going to read some of it now. If you would like a copy of this, you can email me at alternativehomesteading@gmail.com, and I'm happy to attach it in an email for you so that you can read it. So anyway, let me scroll up here. I'm on page 10. This is where I'm going to start reading for the most part, but it's the table of contents is Cointelpro. And let me just scroll up here. It's called Bridging the Gap. It's copyright 2009 by GmB Bailey. It was printed in the United States. And let's see. Let me just scroll up here. Bridging the Gap. And I find it really interesting, the photograph here, because it appears to be a game of chess. And I'll show you the image here. And actually that U.S. Army insignia actually had a knight. So anyway, this is Cointelpro Surveillance, the Buzzsaw, Gangstalking Informants. Bridging the Gap. Bridging the Gap is a disturbing yet poignant look into modern-day democratic surveillance societies. The book examines how this structure is used to discredit, disenfranchise, and destroy innocent citizens. Gang stalking, the Buzzsaw, Cointelpro. What do these words mean? And more importantly, what do they have in common? They are names that have been used to describe the systemic apparatus that reaches out to destroy and discredit those declared enemy by the state. Isn't that hilarious? You are an enemy of your state. I'm an enemy of my state. Absolutely absurd. But what does that mean? Let's continue. This book will open your eyes to how the informant system has taken over these democratic countries and how they're being used to further create a surveillance society where no one will be out of reach should they too become persona non grata by the system. This book is the culmination of 2 years of research and investigation. It's a very brief introduction to the matter of gang stalking. It's a factual account of what gang stalking is and the societal mechanisms that are in existence which allow such a structure to exist. This research has taken many hours to compile and sift through. It says shift. It should be sift. This book just touches the surface on a very difficult and disturbing topic. The first portion of this book will explain what gang stalking is. It just happens to be a systemic structure of control and conformity that is used to destroy the lives of those who go outside of these structures. So if you think a little bit differently, You don't go with with everybody else. You don't go along to get along. You're not a baba sheep, right? Maybe you're the black sheep of the family. Maybe you're an INFJ personality. Maybe you just can't be controlled. Well, these psychopaths, they want to control you and I. So the next portion of this book tries to help the reader understand why people take part in something that is destructive and psychologically destroying to another person. Then we'll look at the informant structure, which is being used in society today, the informant structure, which is responsible for a great deal of crime and corruption, which is being used to fuel a surveillance society that has previously been almost unheard of in modern times. We will see how a system of setups and betrayals fuel the informant system, and you will begin to understand how far-reaching and controlling this system can be. We'll also travel through recent history and review conspiracies and other systems that also allow these destructive investigations to take place and destroy the lives of others. You will learn that there are those in our society that do not play the same rules as others do. Their goals are to entrap and destroy the life of the next target, and to turn that target into a person that is capable of then becoming part of the same game that was used to destroy them. Lastly, we will review the final pieces of the puzzle that fuel this system and helps it continue to stay in place. We will briefly review what can and can't be done to help curtail what is happening to so many in society. So now we're going to scroll down a little bit more and get to the page that I was going to read to you. That was just like a little brief introduction. Chapter 1. Bridging the Gap. This is page 10. How can we bridge the gap? As an individual who's been researching and investigating a practice that has been termed gangstalking, quote unquote, this is a continual question that haunts me. How do I explain in a credible fashion to the general population of so-called democratic countries that there are extremely undemocratic practices happening in their own countries? That there are individuals being tortured and harassed to the point of death, suicide, and even extreme acts of violence? How can I do this in a credible fashion that will not leave me sounding like a complete lunatic or conspiracy theorist? And this is for educational purposes only. I am reading a book. How can I explain that for years these democratic countries have been setting up their own citizens to become the eyes and ears of the state? That within these democratic countries, they have created legions of informants, the same way they did in the former East Germany. That these countries have been plotting to become networks of what in the end will be a global surveillance society that is capable of following and tracking an individual wherever they go. How can I possibly explain to individuals who are right where I was a couple of years ago that what they believe about their society in many cases is an illusion or a flat-out lie? 2 years ago, I was deaf and dumb and blind to the realities of what was happening in my society. I dare say that if someone had tried to explain to me that there were people being tortured in democratic countries that human rights organizations were not willing to help, I would have looked on the problems with a great deal of disbelief and skepticism. And this is why when you try to discuss this with your family and friends, they cannot wrap their mind around it because they're not seeing it, they're not involved. As a teenager, as a child, and then an adult, I grew up like many, believing that torture does not happen in democratic countries. The human torture happens only in other countries where they're not free, where people don't have rights. When I think of torture happening, I still think of countries like China, Russia, countries like the UK, Canada, and even the United States were not the first that came to my mind. And yet, these and many democratic countries are at the forefront of the horrors that are being enacted against their own citizens. This is going to be very hard for many to comprehend, much less believe. But that is what I'm going to be setting out to do in this book. During the course of this book, I'm going to try to explain how it is possible. I'm going to try to bridge the gap from where I was a couple of years ago, where had you told me this was happening, I would have walked off sarcastically and possibly advised you to seek psychological assistance, to where I am today in the realities, the horrors that are being enacted right inside our very countries and that many of us have come to know and love. I'm going to be bridging that gap on a systemic practice that, at times, will sound like something straight out of the X-Files or a science fiction movie like The Matrix or another movie, where you wake up to the world that you did not even know existed, where the truths that you were taught are lies, and the harsh reality of existence within a society is not what many of us have come to expect or even believe to be possible. I hope that in the end, if I'm not able to fully convince you of the truth, that I will at least be able to enlighten you of some of the things that have been happening within society. Gangstalking, in its simplest form, is a covert investigation that's opened on an individual. I'm going to add, yes, somebody was so curious about you, so curious about your life, wanted to know every little friggin' detail about you. They placed you on a list to open an investigation on you. The individual is then placed under overt and covert forms of surveillance. The person is followed around 24/7. Foot patrols, vehicle patrols are used to follow the individual around as part of the monitoring process. During these patrols, a one-handed sign language is used to assist the citizen informants with communicating to each other. That's the quick and easy part of gangstalking. That's not that hard to understand or believe, right? Well, what comes next? It's the great divide that exists between gangstalking targets and the rest of society. Gangstalking is not just a covert investigation. It's also designed to be a systemic form of control that is capable of destroying a person's life. Once you're targeted, it seeks to control every aspect of your life, which, in my opinion, this is total sickness, that anybody would want to control another person's life. This covert investigation tries to take over much like a parasite in the brain. You know, the parasites on patrol. You'll soon find that your life is not your own anymore. Friends you thought you could trust, gone. Family you thought you could rely on, not trustworthy anymore. The same becomes true for coworkers, neighbors, partners, and many others that you formerly thought that you could trust. What happens to these individuals? Their cooperation is begged, borrowed, bullied, bribed, bargained for. Look at all those B words. B, 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 B. Either way, the end result is the same. You soon find that network that you thought you could rely on is not there. And you soon find yourself very much alone. To understand the process that happens, it's helpful to understand other concepts. On an emotional and psychological level, Gangstalking has many similarities to workplace mobbing, which we've discussed in many of my videos. And workplace mobbing is probably our closest cousin on these levels. Where workplace mobbing starts off and can be specifically traced back to the workplace, gangstalking has no one inception point. Gangstalking can originate just about anywhere and under a variety of circumstances and conditions. Before workplace mobbing was studied, many targets of this practice were misdiagnosed as having paranoid delusions. This is where targets of workplace mobbing were 15 years ago, before credible research was done into the phenomenon. Targets of this practice were often thought to be paranoid. Some were locked away and put on medication. But a decade and a half later, with more understanding into this deliberate phenomenon, we realize that the practice is far-reaching and systemic. It's not only a problem in Europe, but in many other democratic countries as well. When a problem is not understood, especially by outsiders who might have a cold, calculating, or even dispassionate interest in the subject matter, it's easy to falsely label something that's not understood. And that's why you're an enemy of the state, because you're not easily understood, especially if you're of that particular personality type. Now, such as the people are that are part of that phenomenon, or the phenomenon itself, today, the concept of workplace mobbing is very well understood. It's become more normalized in society thanks to research by credible professors such as Kenneth Westhouse. Professor Westhouse found himself as a target of workplace mobbing, and he was able to ward off the attack that was aimed at him, and then spent the next decade studying the phenomenon and assisting other targets. He is now a widely respected researcher in this field. When it comes to subject matters such as bullying, gangstalking, workplace mobbing, the world at large is often unaware of the devastating effects this harassment is capable of having on an individual. It is therefore up to the insiders within those communities to bring knowledge and understanding to the population at large about what is happening within their communities. And that is what we do on this channel. 10 years ago, bullying was not understood that well. But with the persistence of people, such as the late Tim Field, it's now a household word and a very well understood concept. Now, the gangstalking community are on the precipice of getting their specific targeting understood. Remember, this is 2009. The term itself has become more popular and normalized in society, but where the term itself has become more common, there's still a great deal of limited understanding and at times preconceived prejudices about notions about targets of gangstalking by people of various fields and outside communities. This was temporarily complicated by the community when the community was falsely labeled as being an extreme community by the New York Times. The gangstalking community is not an extreme community. They are a misunderstood community who have not been properly listened to. Gangstalking communities are about 3 to 5 years behind where their fellow counterparts in bullying and workplace mobbing were. More research is needed into the subject matter, but because what is happening is being enacted at official levels, this further complicates exposing this specific targeting to the general population, because, the people who are involved, the sheriff's department, your police department, your county lawyer, the judges, like the PVA officer who inflates your property taxes by more than $1,400 and then just casually forgets to send you a notification about it and then lies through his teeth that he did when he did not. So they're all in on it. Yeah, at the county level, at the state level. The gangstalking community is at the crossing over stage, and for every move made forward, there are silent watchers in the background. As stated in the New York Times article, they are often misdiagnosing the community and mislabeling members of the community without giving any actual credence to the research being presented and the very real possibility that what targets are saying is true. And we can all prove it. And that this is in fact really happening. The key emphasis then relies on mechanisms within the gangstalking community to prove innocence, because the community has been declared by some as guilty, or rather mislabeled as paranoid, delusional, or mentally ill. Basically, that's really a projection, guys, because all of the people that are doing this to you are delusional, mentally ill. Gangstalkers are sick, depraved lunatics with sadistic personality traits. They're the gift card whores. Greedy little effers. Yeah, they are. They get their rocks off. Their strength and unity, this has been demonstrated with the mobbing community, yet this is still a key point that eludes some portion of the gangstalking community due to several key internal factors. Therefore, exposing and awareness remain key elements when it comes to bridging the gap within the rest of society and helping others understand what gang stalking is. Chapter 2. So, what is gang stalking? In addition to being a covert investigation, like, they want to know what I feed my chickens. They want to know how I clean my chicken coop. They want to know what kind of soap I use to wash my private parts. Yeah, these depraved lunatics, they want to know all those little secrets. They want to know who you talk to on the phone, who you're text messaging. These are sick, pathetic losers. Gang stalking is a systemic form of control. It has similarities to workplace mobbing, but it's called gang stalking because it takes place primarily outside in the community, where the target or targeted individual is followed around and placed under intrusive and directed surveillance by groups of organized, covert, human intelligence sources known as informants. Well, I beg to differ. There ain't no intelligence going on with these covert humans around here. And they're not covert either. They're very overt. The only ones that are covert are the ones that are walking around on my property right now in cloaking devices. Okay, maybe we can call them semi-intelligent. But the way I look at it, it's anybody that watches, stalks another human being to torture them, harass them, stress them out. There's something inherently wrong with the psychology of that individual. That is a sick mind. Mobbing can be understood as the stressor to beat all stressors. It's an impassioned collective campaign by co-workers to exclude, punish, humiliate a targeted worker, initiated most often by a person in a position of power or influence. Mobbing is a desperate urge to crush and eliminate the target. The urge travels through the workplace like a virus, infecting one person after the other. The target comes to be viewed as an absolutely aberrant, with no redeeming qualities outside the circle of acceptance and respectability, deserving only of contempt. And actually, that is the sound of the voice that I hear through emails and on the phone of little Bobby Edwards at the Jackson County PVA office. Contempt and mockery. Well, that's okay, little Bobby Edwards. You are going to be exposed for exactly who you are in an upcoming future video. And it'll be by somebody who's speaking the truth with all the evidence in the world to expose your lies. So anyway, the target comes to be viewed as aberrant, with no redeeming qualities, outside the circle of acceptance and respectability, deserving only of contempt. As the campaign proceeds, a steadily larger range of hostile ploys and communications come to be seen as legitimate. Now I'm going to add, because I know a lot of you guys are highly educated. Some of you guys are musical geniuses, technologically adept, articulate, great vocabularies, writers, graduates. Some of you guys have master's degrees, and some of you guys have PhDs. Some of you guys are also considered to be like prodigies or geniuses. But that's why they want to investigate you. It's not an investigation. These people are sick, depraved lunatics. They're envious and jealous losers. They want what you have. They want to steal your joy. They want to steal what you have. So why would the government of a democratic country target and monitor an innocent person 24/7? Think of the cost involved. The person would have to be guilty to elicit that sort of attention, right? Average people are not important enough to have that much attention paid to them, much less by the government. So these are legitimate reactions that a person might have upon first hearing about gang stalking. But just think about people in the past who have been gang stalked. Right? What about that the 27 Club that we were talking about in my chat Saturday night? You know, the 27 Club is all the people that have disappeared at the age of 27. Movie stars and musicians. You know, people like Michael Jackson, who's not 27, but Michael Jackson, Prince. The names are escaping me now. Robin Williams, Janis Joplin, Elvis Presley. The list is endless. Everybody who's at the pinnacle of their career, they get taken out. But Michaela Raines, Save a Fox. Gang stalking is similar to workplace mobbing on an emotional and psychological level. Many people do not realize that under the recent anti-terror laws, governments now have even more legal powers than they did before to invade the privacy of the average person. So whatever happened to those peeping Tom laws? These laws allow investigations to be opened on private citizens. These laws allow for email, internet, phone, and other forms of communication to be intercepted. The laws enable informants to be hired to spy on average citizens. Investigations can be opened for the most trivial reasons like, she likes cats. She doesn't ear tip her cats. Like that organization that brings in millions of dollars that kills 30% of the population of cats under the guise of trap, neuter, return. These laws are being abused in many countries, like the Scottish councils are using surveillance and security powers intended to fight terrorism and organized crime in order to spy on ordinary members of the public suspected of petty offenses such as breaching the smoking ban, playing music too loudly, and dropping litter. Oh my goodness, this sounds just like my neighbors. And what about the spitting? Oh my goodness gracious. Somebody needs to be surveilling my neighbors because they smoke, spit, drink, play with weapons. They play their music too loudly and talk about dropping litter and poopy diapers. Oh my goodness. And for all you newcomers, I have a neighbor, a family of neighbors, They love poop. You know, these are Satanists. These are Luciferian Satanists. They love their poop. So they dump poopy diapers in front of my mailbox in a bag. And also have the audacity to drive up to my gate at midnight with their pickup truck and throw soiled toilet paper across my gate. All caught on video, just like the poopynurse.com caught on video. It's not defamation if it's true. The same abuses were happening on a regular basis in the UK and other democratic countries as well. And in the UK, the laws were being used to open investigations and spy on people for putting out garbage on the wrong day. Antisocial behavior, dog fouling, I don't know what that means, and other minor offenses. Maybe it's your dog pooping or whatever. Yeah, so they were being spied on. Investigations were being opened on them for putting out the garbage, the trash on the wrong day. Is that amazing? Anti-terror powers were used to spy on a member of the public after his neighbor complained about his noisy wardrobe doors and loud footsteps. The Fife Council was given permission to plant and recording equipment in the neighbor's flat in response to concern that his or her human rights were being infringed because of the noise. The article goes on to say that in many cases these investigations are more costly than the crimes they're looking into. Still, such investigations are becoming more and more common every day. Imagine how much money they're spending on me here in Jackson County, Kentucky. Oh my goodness, for 6 years? Wow. In another case, a family was being followed around for 3 weeks and placed under 24/7 surveillance because the council believed that they were given a false address. The article goes on to say that in many cases these investigations are more costly because they're followed around 24/7 surveillance. They were spied on by their local council on suspicion of falsifying their address to get their daughter into a popular local primary school. Like, is that like a big deal? Like, is that a reason to spy on somebody, spend all that money? Jenny Patton and Tim Joy said, "We had absolutely no idea we were being watched. This wasn't just a cursory background check. The details of the 3-week surveillance operation read like an M15 logbook. Quote, target vehicle pulls up and parks, unquote. Quote, female and 3 children enter vehicle, unquote. Quote, curtains open and lights on in premises, unquote." Then subsequently they're told that they've been snooped on. The family were understandably horrified. Many gang-stalking targets are placed under surveillance in similar ways for months, even years, before they too realize that they're being targeted by organized surveillance apparatus. So what happens during gang-stalking surveillance operations is very similar to what happens to many innocent individuals in the former East Germany or activists and dissidents in Russia. Many innocent people in the former East Germany would be targeted for these covert investigations, and then their friends, family, and the community at large would be used to monitor, prosecute, and harass them. In Russia, it was used by the state to declare activists, dissidents, or anyone they thought to be an enemy of the state as mentally unfit, and many were institutionalized using this form of systemic control. The movie The Lives of Others, yes, I recommend you're seeing that. The Lives of Others is loosely based on this type of Stasi investigation. In fact, you can find that movie on YouTube. I actually watched it on YouTube. Many in Western countries do not realize that the psychiatric reprisal has not just been used in countries like Russia and China. In many instances, this practice is being used in democratic countries, like here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where they have taken hold of Jessica Thomason, PhD, chemist, medicating her against her will. for more than a year. Oh, she's not the only one. She said there's somebody there that's been there 8 years. These psychiatric reprisals are being used on disgruntled workers, whistleblowers, and anyone that management wants to swiftly and quietly deal with. On October 5, 1998, Norm Crosty, Crosty, sent a letter to the Labor Relations Department in his plans. Crosty, for 13 years, he was an electrician at the Ford Motor Company's Wixom, Michigan assembly plant. He complained that he could not do his job because so many of his bosses were taking the necessary equipment out of the plant to work on their homes and personal businesses. Oh my goodness. Well, the next day, the plant director of human resources invoked a Ford program for combating workplace violence to bar Crosty from the factory and ordered him to see a company-paid psychiatrist or lose his job. So this is what happens, you know. This guy is doing a great job, and what he has witnessed at the Ford Motor Company are people in a position of authority that are his bosses taking equipment out of the plant to work on their personal homes and personal business. And that equipment is needed by the workers. This guy cannot do his job without this equipment. It's being removed. So instead of bringing the equipment back so the guy could do his job, they're telling him, see a shrink or lose your job. A little more than 14 months later, and 725 miles away, officials at Emory University cited a similar concern about violence to justify using armed guards to escort Dr. James Murtaugh off the university property when Dr. R. Wayne Alexander, chairman of the Department of Medicine at Emory, ordered him to see a company-selected psychiatrist or lose his job. And 6 weeks earlier, Murtaugh, a professor of pulmonology at Emory, had filed false claim suit against the university, alleging that it has misspent millions of dollars in federal grant money. I'm sure that wasn't a false claim, because the universities waste so much money. That's fact. Half of the research they do is total BS. The closest thing to gangstalking that democratic countries have seen before this is McCarthyism, Cointelpro, and Red Squad programs. Red Squad programs were used for monitoring and harassment of various groups. They've been in place for over 100 years, and they also employed the use of informants. The American Cointelpro program is extremely similar to what we see happening with gangstalking, and during Cointelpro investigations, the government would open files on targets. Everyone in the target's life would be contacted and forced to cooperate with the investigations. The targets of Cointelpro would have their lives disrupted, destroyed in every way possible. Rumor, slander, break-ins, setups, infiltrations, destruction of personal professional relationships, false media stories. Assassinations. It was one of the worst programs ever invented by any government to destroy dissidents. During a gangstalking investigation, informants are recruited from every level and sector of society. Just like with Cointelpro investigations, everyone in the target's life is made a part of the ongoing, never-ending, systemic psychological harassment and manipulation of the target. These actions are specifically designed to control the target and to keep them in line. Oh yeah, they're doing a great job keeping us all in line, huh? They're doing such a great job keeping us in line. These actions are also designed to destroy the target's credibility over time, make them look crazy, and leave them with no form of support. I don't know, guys. I have more video evidence of what crazy looks like in Jackson County, Kentucky. Just take a look at what's going on. Just, you want to see what's going on here? Just take a look in my mailbox. Do a search on my channel. Just type in the word mailbox. For the targets of this harassment, gangstalking is experienced as covert, psychological, emotional, and in some cases, a physical attack that is capable of immobilizing and destroying a target over time. And for the state, it's a way to keep the targets in line, control them, or destroy them. Other similar programs of control and conformity have been used in countries like Russia, East Germany, with equal success and lethality. What we're seeing now is an almost global, coordinated, and organized effort of control and conformity. Community policing. Now that to me is an oxymoron. And trust me, they are morons. There's no oxy involved. They're just morons. Many countries around the world are currently using the model of policing called community-oriented policing. It describes a systemic approach to policing. It focuses on instilling a sense of community within a geographically located neighborhood. Communities come together and discuss what values they would like to have in their community. And it's also a time to discuss any problems that might be happening in a specific area. And if a problem is identified, an investigation can be opened. Community-oriented policing is a model of policing now practiced in many cities around the globe. These local programs in many countries have been forming partnerships with other government-run programs at provincial, state, and federal levels. Reporting of gangstalking, it's not only coming in from democratic countries, it's coming in from many other countries as well. This model of policing has been previously used in communist countries. American communitarians promote the same kinds of surveillance and neighborhood informants the communists used to control East Germans. Americans are slowly being taught what East Germans had to learn very quickly. Today, the KGB trains community police all over America. Oh, isn't that just dandy and wonderful? This model was also used in China, where citizens were used as part of the surveillance apparatus to help control and monitor their society. And just 20 years ago, democratic countries would have been alarmed at adapting this form of policing. But today, it's being embraced and marketed as the only way to truly meet future needs and effectively see to the needs of all the members of the community. Well, I'll tell you as a fact, some of the people in my community can't stand each other's guts. Community policing, the East German system of surveillance, and Cointelpro were all funded at higher governmental levels. Systems of control and conformity or harassment programs such as this are almost always funded at government levels. Gangstalking is a similar type of program and operates in a similar manner. It's one branch in a system of control and conformity that has been in place for many years. A system of control with many local groups and appendages taking part, like the octopus. The video they have of the octopus, like there are tentacles in all different directions. So what are the goals of gangstalking? The goals of gangstalking are very similar to the goals of Cointelpro, East Germany, and Russia. The goal is to maintain state control at all costs. Yeah, they're doing a great job. They can't even pass an audit here in Kentucky. They're under criminal investigation here in Kentucky. Yeah. This is facilitated by isolating the targets of this harassment from all forms of support. This way, the target can eventually be set up for false arrest, institutionalization, forced suicide, acts of violence, or government-sanctioned, listen to government-sanctioned poverty. You know, like increasing my property taxes by more than $1,400 without telling me about it, and then lying about it. That's okay, little Bobby. I'll be filing 2 complaints against you with the state. And if the state doesn't want to do anything about it, well, that's their problem. Then they're violating tax law. The other goals of this harassment campaign include destroying the target's reputation and credibility, making the target look crazy or unstable. These actions are primarily accomplished via slander and rumor campaigns. And as I've said before, when it comes to slander and rumor, consider the source. Not only consider the source, but think about it. Why would somebody approach you to spread a slanderous statement about anyone in the community? Like, why would somebody do it? Think, people. Use your noodle. Think about this. Consider the source, and then ask yourself the question, why am I being approached with this rumor, this information? Why? Envy, jealousy, greed? Another hard-to-imagine goal of this campaign is to sensitize the target. This means getting the target conditioned to react in a negative or adverse manner, often to an everyday stimuli. The goal of this technique is to get the target to act out in front of others who do not realize that the target has been deliberately sensitized. The only one that's been acting out around here are my sorry-ass neighbors. They've been a little quiet lately. Maybe they're not getting paid their gift cards anymore. After 6 years, maybe their contracts have expired. The target can be sensitized in any number of ways, but what primarily happens is the target is exposed to negative actions or words over a period of time. These negative actions and words are then linked to everyday stimuli such as pens clicking, keys jangling, or other common everyday actions or activities. Honestly, guys, that's not really happening here. My neighbors live too far away for me to hear any clicking of pens or jingling of keys or anything like that. But yeah, we do have loud people driving by all the time. Like as soon as I walk out the door. For example, Joe will be mobbed at work, and as part of the daily mobbing, his coworkers will loudly cough at him every time they harass him by calling him names like loser, worthless, lame, demented. They will slander him and have others that are slandering him show disgust by glaring and coughing at him. They might even bang into his desk or get into his personal space, always using the stimuli in a negative manner, but out in public, they will follow him loudly and obnoxiously coughing at him, even banging into him at the times to provoke him. When he goes to stores, they will get others to do the same. And after months or after years of this, unknown to Joe, he's become negatively sensitized to the stimuli and can then be used to harass him without the names or the glaring looks. The association has been formed because of all the other negative associations and harassment. And then once the target is sensitized, the informants have an easier time identifying the targeted individual while they're out in public on patrol. These types of harassment programs are designed to make the target vulnerable. They want to make the target destitute. The secondary goal seems to make the target homeless, jobless, give them a breakdown, and the primary goal seems to be to drive the target to forced suicide. These were some of the same goals and objectives used during the American Cointelpro program that was used against dissidents. And this is for educational purposes only. I'm reading a book. It's a useful way of eliminating perceived enemies of the state. Martin Luther King Jr. was such a target. The FBI sent him a note suggesting that he just delete himself, or they would expose an affair that he'd been having. he refused to comply. So they took him out. Congressional leaders were warned, off the record, about alleged dangers posed by Reverend King. The FBI responded to Dr. King's receipt of the Nobel Peace Prize by attempting to undermine his reputation, his reception, by foreign heads of state and American ambassadors in the countries that be planned to visit. Then, when Dr. King returned to the United States, steps were taken to reduce support for a huge banquet and a special quote-unquote day that they were planning in his honor. The FBI's program to destroy Dr. King as the leader of the civil rights movement entailed attempts to discredit him with churches, universities, and the press, and steps were taken to attempt to convince the National Council of Churches, the Baptist World Alliance, and leading Protestant ministers to halt financial support of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and to persuade them that, quote, Negro leaders should completely isolate Dr. King and remove him from the role he's now occupying in the civil rights activities. Then, when the FBI learned that Dr. King intended to visit the Pope, an agent was dispatched to persuade Francis Cardinal Spellman to warn the Pope about the likely embarrassment that may result to the Pope should he grant King an audience. Isn't that unbelievable? The lengths that they will go through. The FBI sought to influence universities to withhold honorary degrees from Dr. King. Attempts were made to prevent the publication of articles favorable to Dr. King and to find friendly news sources that would print unfavorable articles. The FBI, see, here they are, they keep, that's the FBI offered to play for reporters tape recordings allegedly made from microphone surveillance of Dr. King's hotel rooms. Oh, well, isn't that so nice and thoughtful of them? The FBI mailed Dr. King a tape recording made from its microphone coverage. According to the chief of the FBI's Domestic Intelligence Division, the tape was intended to precipitate a separation between Dr. King and his wife in the belief that the separation would reduce Dr. King's stature. The tape recording was accompanied by a note which Dr. King and his advisors interpreted as a threat to release the tape recording unless Dr. King committed suicide. Wow. They stoop, they're low. They stoop low. They're low, low, low. These are low-life losers. Other targets of Cointelpro were eventually driven to suicide. They had their reputations ruined. Martin Luther King Jr. was viewed as a threat, a potential black messiah that could unite the masses. Okay, guys, listen to that. A potential, they considered him a threat because he was a potential black man, messiah, that could unite the masses, which would be wonderful. But these losers consider it to be a threat because they're narcissistic psychopaths that want to destroy the lives of others. So who gets targeted? Targeting can happen to anyone in society. In the past, primary targets of programs such as Cointelpro have been minorities. In Russia, it was the activists, dissidents, and anyone perceived to be an enemy of the state. I don't even know what that means, enemy of the state. An enemy. Like, what do you have to do to be an enemy of the state? Breathe? Targeting, however, can happen to anyone. Individuals can be targeted for being too outspoken. Whistleblowers, dissidents, people who go up against wealthy corporations. Or how about the feral cat cartel? Women's groups. Single women. It says it right here on paper. Single women. We are the biggest threat to society. Single women. single-handedly, flat down, single women. Anti-war proponents, individuals identified or targeted as problems at these community meetings. I never go to these community meetings. And other innocent individuals. The majority of these targets, at first, they're not aware that they've become targets of a covert investigation. What a target will initially notice is often overt forms of harassment that will cause them to move or change jobs. However, every time a target moves or changes jobs, the same information, lies, and slander will be spread out into a new community, and the systemic monitoring and harassment will continue. The women who are singled out tend to be independent, intelligent, and confident professionals. I'll repeat that. The women who are singled out tend to be independent, intelligent, and confident professionals. There's a heavy predominance of those types of women in the TI community, affirmed McKinney. And that happens to be Julianne McKinney. Rest in peace, Julian. Men are in a smaller proportion and tend to be nonconformists. So you guys, you're not sheeple people. You're nonconformists. They usually have a sense of self-esteem and pride that seems to invite targeting. Remember, the The MFS was a criminal federal police force that deliberately singled out people exactly like this on a massive scale. Others that have been targeted include those who have had a bad breakup with an ex-spouse who has influence, criminals. This program may have begun targeting only criminals. Those who reported a crime where the perpetrator was a member of an organized crime ring. And how would somebody know, actually? Sometimes you won't even know. Landowners targeted by the government or industry for land seizures. Oh, we don't know anything about that here in Jackson County, Kentucky. Gays, minorities, inventors, awaiting a large payoff like my father. Mentally disabled, those who have had arguments with neighbors who have connections. Those awaiting a large insurance claim. Convenient targets of opportunity. Those with special talents or abilities. Then, I don't know, guys. Most of my subscribers have special talents and abilities. Group members who act in unacceptable ways. Independent free thinkers who are not part of the herd. Those who are perceived as vulnerable or weak. Those opposing the New World Order. The pattern that is unfolding indicates that many targets are people who tend to be emotionally developed, self-confident, independent, free thinkers, artistic, people who don't need the approval of others, and those not prone to corruption. Like, that's right, there's no way you could pay me anything to do this to somebody else. Not happening, not in this lifetime. There are people who don't need to be part of a group to feel secure. Generally, people who are not part of the herd, like you and me. In his research into the bullying phenomenon, Tim Field discovered that those targeted have very similar traits. They were leaders. They had a sense of integrity, and they refused to join the established clique. Also, they were good at their job, often excelling. They were popular with people, colleagues, customers, clients, pupils, parents, patients. They were experts and the person to whom others came to for advice, either personal or professional. For example, you get more attention than the bully. Oh, that really pisses them off. That really pisses them off. Having a well-defined set of values which you are unwilling to compromise. having a strong sense of integrity. Bullies despise integrity because they don't have any, and they seem compelled to destroy anyone who has integrity. Refusing to join an established clique. Showing independence of thought or deed. Refusing to become a corporate clone and drone. If these are the types of people in society being targeted for bullying, mobbing, and gangstalking, then can it be assumed that we might not be doing society a favor by eliminating these vital types of individuals? As this type of person is eliminated via systemic harassment, can we also assume that maybe less qualified individuals are going to be left to fill the key and vital roles in society? Absolutely. People from all walks of life are being recruited to be the eyes and ears of the state. Every sector of society that you can think of being asked to become part of the state's spying apparatus. Informants include, but are not limited to, general laborers, wealthy bikers, drug dealers, drug users, street people, punks, hip-hop culture, KKK, black activists, church groups, youth groups, firefighters, police officers, lawyers, healthcare workers, storekeepers, maids, janitors, cable installers, phone repair persons, mail carriers, locksmiths, electricians. There are really no exceptions as to who will be used as informants for the GOV. A recent article came out in the London Telegraph. Now I'm going to remind you that this article that I'm reading is from 2009, saying that children as young as 8 are being employed by the state as covert human intelligence sources, also known as informants. Targeted individuals often complain that the harassment is being perpetrated by all members of the community, including children. And this really upsets me that they use children for this. They are destroying these children. Children are being hired and used by the government to spy on their neighbors in the UK and being encouraged to photograph or video neighbors guilty of dog fouling, littering, or bin crimes. The article says there are hundreds of junior street watchers, age 8 to 10 years old, who are trained to identify and report environmental crime issues such as graffiti and fly tipping. The adult spies, according to authorities, are recruited via newspaper ads. So I'm going to end here because it's just a little over an hour. I'm a little bit tired of talking now. But I look forward to questions and comments. I hope this helped you to better understand what gang stalking is, how you came into this program, the types of people that are involved in getting bullied and mobbed and gang stalked. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not alone, no matter what they say. You are not alone. There are thousands and hundreds of thousands of us on YouTube. More and more of us are speaking out to validate your story. And please remember to share this. It helps the channel grow, gets the message out there. And remember to hit the thumbs up, and thank you for subscribing. And I will talk to you guys soon.